Now, we've seen the importance of quality sleep, but sleep duration is also equally important. You can have all the quality sleep in the world, but if you're not sleeping enough, you're not going to get the benefits. Now, the vast majority of people will need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I know we've seen different numbers back and forth, but for the vast majority of people, that's how much sleep you're going to need. Now, some people say that, oh, I am one of the exceptions. I don't need that much sleep. I can function just fine. Now, there's a chance you might be right, but I hear that all the time. And for the vast majority of people that try to sleep 6 hours or less, they are actually doing a lot of harm to their body. So researchers at the University of California were actually studying this. They were seeing they found that some people actually have a gene that enables them to function well on just 6 hours of sleep a night. That gene, however, is very rare, and it only comes in less than 3% of the population. So there's a chance that you might be one of the lucky ones that you can get away with 6 hours of sleep and be in that 3%, but the other 97% of you still need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So, what can happen if you do not sleep enough and you get less than 6 hours of sleep, for example? Well, there's one study that came out pretty recently, and they were looking at people who slept less than 6 hours a night. So they were sleeping 5 hours or less per night. And the people in this group were aged 50, 60, and 70. Now, keep in mind that this age group is people who generally have trouble sleeping and generally sleep less. They had a 30 to 40% increased risk of multi-morbidity. Multi-morbidity is when you have multiple chronic diseases. And this is compared to people who were sleeping for 7 hours a night. Also, they were more likely to get just one chronic disease. So for healthy 50-year-olds in this study, and they slept less than 6 hours, they were more than 20% likely to get just one chronic disease if they never had one. And another finding from the study, and this one might be a little scary, is people who reported 5 hours of sleep at night at age 50 were 25% more likely to have subsequently died at some point across this study. And it was a 25-year follow-up period, this study was. Now, an association of that could be the chronic diseases, right? Because if you have more chronic diseases, obviously you're going to be more likely to die. But regardless, 25% of them were more likely to die at some point. So you're also more likely to get sick if you are deprived of sleep. There were some researchers that were seeing if deprivation in sleep affects people's immune system. So they studied 23 healthy males, and they just deprived them of sleep for one night. And they deprived them between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. So there was 4 hours where they deprived them of sleeping. And they were looking at their natural killer cells, or their NK cells. These are really important in our immune system. And what they found is in 18 of the 23 subjects, after just one night of being sleep deprived, their immune system function, or specifically their natural killer cell function, reduced to 72% of what it was in the beginning of the study. And that's after just one night of being sleep deprived. But the good news is, after one night of resumed normal sleep, that returned to baseline levels. But you can see that this is pretty alarming, because just one night can have very significant effects on your immune system. So you can imagine people who chronically do not sleep enough, that they're going to be way more likely to get sick. And this can be an explanation why not sleeping enough or not getting good quality sleep, you're more likely to get sick. So what are some ways to increase your sleep duration? Well, some simple tricks are going to be, one, setting a routine. So you want to be in bed between 30 minutes to 1 hour before it's time to go to sleep. So if you want to sleep for 8 hours, you want to be in bed for 8.5 to 9 hours, because it makes sense that it might take us time to fall asleep. We might start doing something stupid. We might start reading a book, might scroll on our phone a little bit. You want to give us some time so that we can fall asleep. A really simple trick to help you fall asleep on time, and a trick that a lot of people are going to have trouble doing, is when you feel very tired and you're ready to fall asleep, do not look at a screen, please. I also struggle with this sometimes, where you might have the urge to look at Instagram or something before you go to sleep. Before you know it, you're scrolling for 3 hours, and now you already wasted 3 hours of sleep. But the other thing is, when you look at this light, when you look at this blue light before you go to sleep, we talked about this before, this will suppress your melatonin, and this will also shift your internal clock. So your melatonin, again, is your sleep hormone. When you have less melatonin, it's going to be harder for you to go to sleep. And also, when you're shifting your biological clock, now you're going to be inclined to sleep later. So if you're scrolling on Instagram for 3 hours, now you're already losing 3 hours of sleep, and then you're suppressing your melatonin, so it's harder for you to go to sleep, and now you're shifting your clock so that you feel inclined to sleep later already. So looking at your screens, especially when you're really tired, is going to wake you up, and it's going to be a lot harder for you to get quality sleep. So simple thing to do is when you're really tired and you're in bed, just fight that urge and do not look at your screen. Now, another way to kind of control your circadian rhythm and control your sleep duration is to start sleeping at consistent times. So this is a little off topic, but I used to have sleep paralysis every single night when I was in high school. If you don't know what sleep paralysis is, it's basically when your body wakes up in the middle of the night when you're dreaming, but your body's still paralyzed. So your eyes will open, your brain will know that you're awake, but you cannot move. And this is actually a really terrifying thing. I would wake up, my eyes would open, and I would see my room surrounding me, but I wouldn't be able to move. And it gets really scary because you can start seeing your dreams come to real life, or you can start seeing projections in your environment around you. And this is thought to be a reason why a lot of people have these experiences of alien abductions or other demonic assaults when they're sleeping, because you can imagine if you're sleeping and you're paralyzed and you can't move and you're seeing things happen in front of you, that would be terrifying, and there's not many other explanations behind it. But I haven't had sleep paralysis in a very long time. And one of the main things I did was I started controlling my circadian rhythm. So one of the ways I started controlling my circadian rhythm was sleeping and waking up at consistent times. So I'm lucky enough where I work in a place where my hours are pretty consistent. So I wake up and I go to sleep pretty much the same time. But the hard part is on the weekends, because this is the time where you want to sleep in, and this is the time where you want to go to sleep later. And obviously there's times where I kind of break my circadian rhythm and I hang out with my friends and I go to sleep at 2 in the morning instead of going to sleep at like 10:30, which is what I normally try to do. But regardless, I control my circadian rhythm most of the time, or at least I try to. And I also try to wake up at around the same time. So obviously on the weekend, everyone wants to sleep in a little bit. So on the weekends, I might give myself like an hour to sleep in, but I try not to go more than that. And this has really helped me and really helped my sleep and helped me get enough of my sleep duration, because your body functions on these 24-hour cycles. And when you keep these 24-hour cycles consistent, then the whole physiology in your body will start to stay consistent. And this will kind of remind your body that it's time to go to sleep. And if you keep that consistent, then it's going to help you get that duration of sleep that you need. Now, another thing that helped my circadian rhythm is eating at consistent times. So I basically do some sort of intermittent fasting. It's not intentional, it's kind of what fits best with my schedule, and it's worked with me so far. But basically I eat my first meal at around 1 p.m., so I skip breakfast. And my second meal is at around 7:30 p.m. or 7 p.m. And those are the 2 meals I eat throughout the day. I do drink water throughout the day. But this has really helped me as well. And timing of your meals, we've seen that it also helps control your circadian rhythm. It also helps control your body's internal clock. Now, the other thing that this helps with is you don't want to be eating right before you go to sleep. It's best to stop eating 2 to 3 hours before you go to sleep. And my rule is no water about 1 hour before you go to bed. Obviously, sometimes this is really hard to do. Like if you're hanging out with friends and you get pizza at 2 in the morning, what can you do, right? But for the majority of the time where you're having a normal routine, this is what you should follow. Because when you eat right before you go to bed, or you drink water right before you go to bed, your body's going to be digesting that food. And this will not only make it so your sleep quality goes down, you're also going to be more likely to wake up and have to go to the bathroom. And now you're going to have to be fighting yourself to go back to sleep when you could have avoided that by not eating right before you go to bed. And oxidative stress is what causes a lot of the diseases that are associated with sleep apnea. So the study was showing that the problem really is a block of nasal breathing. And this is what can cause